Why do we wear tzitzis? While you might think that tzitzis are not the hardest mitzvah to observe, as a teenager I would have begged to differ. They can be kind of annoying and scratchy to put on, and in the summer, who wants another layer of clothing making you sweaty and uncomfortable? And let's face it, those white and blue strings are hardly the height of fashion. And while I get that tzitzis are sort of part of the uniform of any Jewish man or woman in case you happen to be volunteering this mitzvah, it would still help to know why we wear them. As far as mitzvos go, tzitzis are kind of strange. It's not like honoring your parents or giving charity. The reason we wear tzitzis isn't really obvious. But I think that tzitzis will take on a lot more meaning for us and will be a whole lot easier to fulfill with real passion if we know why we're doing it. So why do we do it? Let's take a look at the Torah and see. The Torah tells us to put tzitzis on the corners of our garments, and that's not all. V'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf til Tekhelet, and you shall place a single string of blue on each corner. Now, what on earth do we do with these tzitzis? Do we swing them around? Are they utility strings to help us secure our implements like ancient Israelite tool belts? The text continues, Uri'item oto. What you do with them is you look at them. Uzachartem et kol mitzvot Hashem, and you'll remember all the commandments of God, and you'll perform those commandments. And now the text finally gets into the why of this mitzvah. Leman tizkaru, so that you remember, va'asitem et kol mitzvotai, you'll perform all my commands. V'item k'toshim le'lokechem, and you will thus be holy unto your God. So, we wear tzitzis because, if you look at them, they help you remember and keep the commands and be holy. Our question is answered, except not so fast. I don't know about you, but I've seen tzitzis before, and they don't exactly make me remember anything. Not only that, after donning tzitzis, I don't feel particularly holy. And it's not like I've ever seen anybody rush off to fulfill commandments after seeing some tzitzis. So how exactly do tzitzis work? Well, we get a clue from the verses themselves. The text said, Uri'item oto, and you shall see them, the tzitzis. Except, I lied to you. That's right, I've shattered our sacred trust. That's not the precise translation of those words. Uri'item oto does not mean and you shall see them, but rather, you shall see it, singular. What's the it? Well, the last thing the verse mentioned is the Ptil Tekhelet, that single strand of blue. Maybe somehow, seeing that blue string is the thing that triggers remembering, keeping the commands, and therefore being holy. How does a blue string do that? Well, the sages of the Talmud in Menachos 43b offer an answer. They say that Tekhelet is domel hayam. Blue is like the sea. Yam domel rakia. Sea is like the sky. Rakia lekisei kavod. And sky is like the throne of glory. Presumably what the sages are saying here is, you know how Tekhelet help us remember God and keep the commandments and stay holy? Well, blue reminds us of God. So when I look at the blue string, I remember God. Now, I don't mean to be blasphemous, but it seems a little silly. When I look at the color blue, I can't help but think of the sea. Yeah, happens to me all the time. Just the other day, I saw my friend Tim in a blue shirt, and bam, I was picturing the sea. And when I think of the sea, I mean, I can't help but think of the sky because the sky is also blue. I mean, on some days, when it's not too cloudy. And then once I'm thinking of blue things, I think of God's throne of glory, which apparently is also blue. And bam, after picturing all of that, I can't help but run off to do a mitzvah and be holy. Look, my being flippant aside, I have a real question here. The sage's explanation leaves us no better off than where we were when we first started. Everyone agrees that tzitzis are supposed to help us remember, keep commands, and be holy, but in practice, is that our actual experience of tzitzis? And here's another question on the sages. Why do they have this whole Rube Goldberg machine explanation? If blue is supposed to remind us of God's holy throne, just say that and be done. Why do we need the bit about the blue in the tzitzis being like the water, which is like the blue of the sky, which is like the throne of glory? They're all presumably the same color, so why not cut out the middleman and say Tekhelet on tzitzis reminds us of God's throne? For years, I was puzzled by this strange explanation of the sages, and I stored it away deep in the recesses of my brain. But over the years, I learned some really interesting things about the color blue that were these helpful clues. Until one day, I was looking outside my window and I was struck with an obvious insight that made it all click. But before I share that insight with you, I first need to share those clues with you. That first clue was that I learned that our experience of the color blue was actually really different than the ancients. We can see blue everywhere: dresses, crayons, paint, Cars, ice pops. That's a very 21st century thing. In the ancient world, blue was a really uncommon color. There are very few blue animals, fruits, or vegetables. Blue rarely appears in nature. The color was so rare and expensive that it was limited to use by the rich and the royal, hence the term royal blue. The fact that ancient Israelites wore tzitzis would have been something amazing and unique in the ancient world. Maybe it signaled that all Israelites were royal, maybe that all Israelites were worthy. The second thing I learned about the color blue came in a little-known story smack in the middle of the book of Exodus. It's another story of Revelation where Moses and 70 elders go back up Mount Sinai to meet God. And when they reach the top of the mountain, something incredible happens. They actually see God. I know people aren't supposed to see God, it's sort of shocking, but the text tells us that they do, and it even describes some of what they see. Beneath God's feet, as it were, is a livnat hasapir, a sapphire stone functioning as a sort of footstool, uche'etzem hashamayim latohar, and its blue was so pure, it was like the essence of sky. The text seems to be telling us that God's throne, or at least God's footstool, is sky blue, almost as if the heavens themselves are where God's feet rest. Strange and mysterious, I know, but with that background on the color blue, we're finally ready to talk about the insight that I had when I looked out the window. And maybe we can understand the strange explanation of the sages about the water and the sky and the throne of glory. I had that insight when looking out the window of our offices. It was a second-story office above a warehouse where these trucks would pull in and out of their ports all day and make this awful beeping noise. But the best part of that office was that it was on the bay, and we had these big windows that overlooked the water. Sometimes in the winter, I'd catch the sunset, and these were the most glorious sunsets. The sky in majestic purples and reds and oranges. My window lit up entirely. There were no houses, no trees, just this vast expanse. Some days the sky was gray, filled with clouds. Those days were pretty yucky, because when the sky above was gray, well, the water below would also be gray. And staring at that gray water, I was like, hey, that's weird. I thought water's supposed to be blue. Why is the water this ugly gray color? And like the 21st century nincompoop that I am, it hit me that the color of the sea is not in fact blue. Water is kind of like a mirror. It reflects the sky above. When the sky is gray, the water is gray. And when there's a brilliant sunset with orange and purple, the water is orange and purple. And when the sky is clear and blue, well, the water is blue. And that's when it clicked. I began to think of the mysterious explanation of the sages. The blue of Tzitzis is like the sea, which reflects the sky, which houses God's throne of glory. It's like we're trying to reach the heavens, but we can't, at least not directly. Mankind is terrestrial, of the earth, limited to creating, shaping, and painting with what's down here. For centuries, we painted in earth tones. We couldn't reach the heavens to paint in blues. And yet the Torah has us reach for the heavens. We do it by way of the sea. The sea isn't quite blue. It's a mirror of the heavens. And while we can't paint with anything from the sky to form the color blue, isn't it interesting that the dye that we use to create the blue of Tzitzis comes from the chilazon, a creature of the sea that is the closest portal that we have on this earth to reaching the heavens. All in all, it's a really powerful metaphor. The same way that water mirrors the beauty and the majesty of the blue heavens above, we wish to mirror the values and the holiness of heaven above. Now consider that moment that Moses goes up the mountain to see God. A mountain is the highest the earth can go to greet the heavens. But atop the mountain was a cloud, which is the lowest the heavens can go to greet the earth. Tzitzis are sort of like this invitation to remember that contact of the terrestrial and the divine. And so we wear tzitzis, and we dye one strand of our tzitzis blue, this rare and ancient color. It reminds us of the sea, but the sea is merely a reflection of what is above. And so our gaze shifts upward to the sky and to the throne of glory above it. We climb the mountain, as it were, and we remember our encounter with the divine. And so, of course, when we look at tzitzis, we are renewed in our holiness, and we pledge ourselves to the mitzvos. Now, did tzitzis actually work this way in the 21st century? Not automatically. In ancient times, their symbolism, the power of the color blue, would have been far more shocking and maybe more likely to remind people of their contact with God. For us, blue is pretty common. So what can we do? Well, we're left to be more proactive and to reflect, pun intended, on the chain of connections mentioned by our sages. Notice that the blue of tzitzis reminds us of the blue of the sea. Appreciate that symbolism. It is of our realm, and yet it is earnest in its desire to bring the heavens above down below. Now, what could be more holy than that?
Thanks for watching. Meaningful Judaism is a project of Aleph Beta Labs, and we're supported by generous folks just like you. Make sure to subscribe and go to alephbeta.org to find out more.